Hi folks, we're Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Now, Australia's biggest media outlet has produced a headline story, which they're putting right up there at the top, that Australia is going through an epidemic of violence, sexual violence. They're calling it sexual violence against women. Now, the trouble is that this story is just like this, come out every few months. It's just a regular recurring thing. And I've been seeing these stories for at least 20 years, if not longer. And they say the same thing. Every year, no matter how much money is spent on it, and it's in the range of gazillions now, no matter how much money is spent, the problem only ever gets worse, according to these researchers. So clearly, if the problem is as big as they say, then there's never been a more counterproductive program and expenditure of taxpayer money in the history of expenditure of taxpayer money. So you'd think there'd have to be wow, we need a different strategy here. Now, I guess there's a couple of things that the radicals, and I'll come back to that in a minute, but the radicals always prescribe more government intervention. Government intervention is the answer here, with shitloads of money, of course, but and never-ending amounts of money. That there should be some sort of KPIs or performance targets or something, realistic ones tied to the money. That's just waved away as being misogynistic, patriarchal nonsense, and so on. So let's sort of have a look at it now. Maybe things are as bad as let's just take it as face value. They're suggesting between 800,000 and 1 million women a year in Australia are being sexually assaulted. Now, they don't define sexual assault, so again, I'll come back to that later. And the research that they prescribe is sexual assault is just so broad and so vague that it could be anything. It could be shaking someone's hand. It could be you're in an elevator and you're breathing oxygen, and that deprives the woman in the elevator of oxygen, therefore she's been assaulted. It's just so broad that it could encompass pretty much anything. But let's put that to one side for a minute. If you look at the age demographic that seems to be affected, but far and away affected by this, it's women between the ages of sort of 16 and 35, so prime sort of sexual activity years, and it's that group in particular that seems to be being assaulted, at least according to these radicals. So that sort of doesn't quite fit in, because you're being assaulted, surely you'd be outside of those confines, if it's a universal thing. But that there's only women in that sort of sexual activity bracket are the ones that, by far and away, are the ones supposedly getting assaulted. Nonetheless, let's come back to the article. Now, the article is written by a lesbian academic, and this is not disclosed. It's not disclosed that she's a radical activist and has a history of radical activism. She's a radical Marxist that hates the family, the nuclear family, hates heterosexual men, the patriarchy is the cause of all problems, so on and so on and so on. And they don't say that. They put her up as an independent academic just doing academic research, when it's nothing of the sort. We're talking sort of blatant radical activism here, and there's nothing objective or impartial about it at all. Also, what they don't say is the claims of sexual assault are anecdotal. That is, someone just alleges it happened, and there's been no investigation or examination of the facts and so on. Now, they decry that only something like 1 in 10, give or take, 1 in 10 allegations result in any sort of examination or police action or a conviction and charge, and then only a minority of those end up in convictions. They suggest this means there's all these guilty, oppressor, evil, patriarchal Nazi men that are getting away with it. So massive government interventions required to make sure they don't get away with it. Now, what about false allegations? Well, don't worry about that. There's just all these evil men. So the ideological approach that these people have is that there's just this amorphous mass of evil straight white male Nazis, because brown people apparently don't do this. Straight white male Nazis, and we have to stick it up. We got to hold these evil Nazis to book. Is there a possibility that the numbers go? No. Ideologically, they're all oppressors, so it doesn't matter whether they did or didn't do anything. They're just evil anyway, so hey, who cares? And this is very much the attitude that pervades the supposed research, which is bullshit anyway, and all the writings. Now, in the article, they're only quoting, which shows complete lack of balance and hysterical propaganda. There is not one quote in the article from someone who's saying, well, actually, this is all nonsense. It's all bullshit. There's a bunch of angry lesbians running around living in a fantasy world. There's nothing that counters the narrative there. So they only are quoting people who are grifting and whose livelihood and income depends on the supposed epidemic always getting worse and being omnipresent and so on. And all the shrill demands for more money and more government intervention. Now, let's suppose the problem is as big as they say, and let's suppose, it's not anywhere near it, but let's suppose, just for the moment, what could be the ways of countering it? How could you stop all this? Now, they want lots of money. But that's failed. For 25 years, they've been throwing money at this, and according to them, they're the one. They say it's getting worse every year. They claim that it's as much as 5 to 10% a year increase in incidences, they would allege, of sexual violence. So if it's getting worse all the time, and the amount of money is being spent on it's increasing all the time, again, wouldn't you think of some new strategy around this? So, but they talk about massive government intervention. What do they mean by that? And this is where the chilling part of these Marxist activists really comes in. Their prescribed remedy all the time is to lower the burden of proof for the accuser. So the accuser, as far as they're concerned, needs only to allege it. That's it. Even the vaguest allegation is enough. And then this army of angry lesbians descends on the person saying, you can tell us what he did. Did he have a swastika? So the radical activists they're not concerned with the child or the children or the woman or anything like that at all. What they're concerned is about sticking it up to evil Nazi patriarchy. And this is just simply a device that they're using to do it. They don't give a shit about the people involved. Quite happy to destroy them as collateral damage. So their solution is, well, the only way to stop this is that we accuse every man of doing it, and then we put a very high burden of proof on them to prove they haven't done it or didn't do it, and then that's it. That will solve the problem. Every man needs to be accused, and then he can try and defend himself on a very high burden of proof, and that's how you fix it. Now, this is at the height of the communist Bolshevik terror in the Soviet Union, as a case in point, or even parts of China. This was the sort of thing that they did. This was how they, if you don't like someone, you think they might have the wrong thing, right? Just anything that you're not quite happy at, just accuse them of it, and then we'll drag them into a people's court, and they have to meet a very high burden of proof to prove their innocence. Many of the group of judges on the panel will be, rabid haters of people who are believed to be, bourgeois or middle class or have, be well educated or anything like that. So maybe someone previously owned property or was a factory manager in the old days. That's enough. I mean, you're guilty. You're an oppressor. So these sort of things. This is always the ideological fanatics. They always default to this, always default to this. Be able to accuse anybody and then put them under this. Now, just to give you an idea of when ideological fanatics are in control, how it works. In the divorce court, and I've used this example before. So here's a divorce court where the woman says, "Oh, he, this is like the ex-husband. He abused me." Okay, then, so the judge, an activist, a Jewish activist judge, says, okay, then, well, Mrs. Smith has said that you're an abuser. Now, remember, it's an allegation. There's no proof, no evidence, no witnesses, nothing. Just an allegation. That's it. And nor is there any testing of the allegation. All right, Mrs. Smith, you say that Mr. Smith did. Well, where and when did this happen? Well, what were these abuses? And so even an entry level, basic sort of level of examination or testing there. No. Mr. Smith has alleged it. Therefore, as far as the court's concerned, Mr. Smith, you did it. It is now fact that you are an abuser. So you have to prove that you didn't do it. Now, trying to prove you didn't do something you didn't do is actually not that easy. But then the judge says, okay, and this is where the burden of proof game comes in. All right, Mr. Smith. Now, Mr. Smith quite reasonably say, well, I don't know how you're going to do this. There's no, we don't know what these abuses were, where and when they happened. So, we don't know. We've got nothing, no witnesses. It's just an allegation. You can't hold this to. But in an ideological court, they can and do this. So the judge says, okay, the only answer, Mr. C, the only evidence I will accept in this court, Mr. Smith, given your relationship lasted 5 years, is that you can prove that you were not in the country, that you were overseas, that you prove you were not in the country for that entire 5-year period. That's the only evidence. And this is where the real sting of burden of proof comes. And Mr. Smith, you must have the stamped passport. That's the only evidence I will accept. You must have a stamped passport, and you must have it in the court right now. You can't go home and get it. Now, Mr. Smith had no idea that this evidence would be required. And that's why you have things like disclosure in courts, where you can have your evidence prepared based on what they said and, what your counter saying, that sort of thing. But instead, the court can just arbitrate. Now, this is the sort of system that the radical feminist, lesbian, man-hating, family-hating activists want. They want this type of thing. This will fix it. This will solve it. Now, they have an ideological view that all men are guilty of this, and there's only the ones that get away with it and the ones that get caught. That's their ideological sort of presentation into the whole thing. So as far as they're concerned, every man's guilty anyway, so why do you give a fuck about the evidence? And so they want a massive government intrusion into the family lives and into the lives of private lives of households and so on. Now it's pretty, given how people in this industry are all connected and they have these sort of back channels of communication and arrangement, and we see it sort of in the United States now as all these activists coalescing around activist judges to block Trump's policies. And so this is the type of thing that goes on here, that you don't know the supposed psychologist that says, yes, well, little Billie Jean's definitely been abused by Billy Bob, her father. Oh, no question of that. What they don't tell you is that she's the lesbian lover of the prosecutor who's there, and they're obviously, there's huge conflict of interest in these sorts of things. So all these people are connected. They're in little cabals and covens and so on. So there's no even minimal attempt at objectivity or attempt to avoid conflict of interest. The whole ideological machine is they're all guilty, these men, and again, we just have to get them. And if we can use false allegations or low bar allegations without evidence to get them, then so be it, because we're getting them and they're guilty anyway. So this is now again, the articles aren't even attempting, this media article isn't even attempting to be minimally objective. There is not one dissenting voice, not one dissenting quote. Everybody is quoted as a radical activist and a grifter in this space. So you can dismiss the whole article as hysterical propaganda. But they're still able to attract vast amounts of taxpayer money, which is the grift, of course. But this is what happens when ideological fanatics are given any power and even a few bucks of taxpayer dollars. They go insane and crazy, and they tear down the objectivity of the law, due legal process, rules of evidence, everything that we hold dear for a functioning society, they want to tear it all down just to get at the people they don't like. And they're quite prepared to accept the collateral damage. And again, this happens in every ideological sort of crusade. In the Soviet Union, when they were trying to get to communism, they were prepared to accept deaths of tens of millions of people, and without even thinking. In communist China, the same, the Cultural Revolution, all those things. But again, they're prepared to accept tens of millions of dollars tens of millions of lives lost, approaching 100 million allegedly. So now, so some people say in China, well, China had a population of 1 billion, and if over 1 billion, so if 100 million people died sort of here or there, and in the overall scheme of things, that's kind of not that many when you've got such a big population. Are you kidding me? Tens of millions of people, up to 100 million people died just because of ideological insanity. And you're saying, that's all right. So ideological people, they are prepared in pursuit of the ideology. They're prepared to accept huge collateral damage, and they do it with a shrug of the shoulders. They don't care. The ideological objective and the purity of it is all that matters. You've been a Tacitus today. You've Pushback Channel. Thank you for listening.